Welcome back to Reimagine 2020. I'm Yonah Hochhauser, and today I'm honored to be joined by Roger Ver, founder of Bitcoin.com, crypto legend, amongst many other titles. Roger, thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me on.
Well, first off, let's talk about the most recent or relevant news. Grayscale Investments, the world's largest digital currency asset manager, just announced that Grayscale Bitcoin Cash Trust has actually received DTC eligibility and will begin trading publicly on OTC markets. What does this mean for Bitcoin Cash?
I think it's just more liquidity and more people. The cool part about it for people that aren't living in as free of countries as I am, so for America, for example, they can now buy Bitcoin Cash exposure via their tax-deferred retirement accounts. So they won't actually be holding the Bitcoin Cash directly themselves, but they'll have access to this monetary instrument, and that the price of Bitcoin Cash goes up, the value of their retirement account goes up, and they don't have to pay taxes on that if they hold it until they're 65 or 68 or whatever number they keep moving the retirement age to in the US. But so that's a pretty big deal. So anybody with their E-Trade account or brokerage account, Ameritrade, whatever, they can get access to some Bitcoin Cash indirect exposure. But indirect exposure is certainly better than no exposure at all, and so it makes it easy for people to do it in a way in which they're familiar with. But they can still do it with the Bitcoin.com wallet in 30 seconds as well. So they have the more options people have in life, the better.
Do you see this also causing institutions to also get involved in Bitcoin Cash?
Clearly, yeah, institutions aren't used to using, Ledger wallets or the Bitcoin.com wallet on the iPhone to keep track of, millions of dollars worth of stuff, whereas they are, used to dealing with brokerage accounts. So this will be something that they're very useful to. And to be clear, the Grayscale guys made a very compelling pitch to me recently as to why someone living in a country with no capital gains tax and no income tax, would still want to buy their product. And initially I thought, well, why would I want to do this? There's a 2.5% annual fee, and I don't have any taxes where I'm living anyhow, and where I'm a citizen of anyhow. Why would I want your product? But they made a really good pitch, and their pitch there was that, well, other people will want to buy it as part of their retirement account. And if you look at the historical, the Bitcoin trust and then the Ethereum trust and these other ones, there's a significant premium on the market there. Even though there's a 12-month lockup or a 6-month lockup, you can deposit your Bitcoin Cash now. And even though there's a 2.5% fee, there's likely to be a significantly larger than a 2.5% premium in 12 months when you're allowed to sell it. So if the premium's, let's say, 12.5%, boom, you made 10% on your Bitcoin Cash, and then you can withdraw the dollars from your investment account there, and then buy more Bitcoin Cash on the open market and deposit it into the Bitcoin Cash Trust and wait another 12 months and just cycle it through over and over and arbitrage that until the gap closes in the difference of price from their instrument and the actual Bitcoin Cash. And I thought that was a pretty darn compelling use case, and I think I'll probably do that with some of my own cash here. In fact, I have the documents are waiting for me to sign and transfer them some Bitcoin Cash. So I think that's a pretty cool way to help more people get exposure to Bitcoin Cash and make some money at the same time. So it seems like a win-win to me.
Yeah, that does seem like a pretty good use case. What do you attribute that premium to? Is it the the convenience, like we mentioned before, of someone taking care of holding the crypto for you?
Yeah, I think part of it's the convenience, part of it's the additional convenience for institutions to get involved, and then part of it's the tax-deferred nature. If they just buy Bitcoins directly, there are going to be all sorts of crazy tax reporting requirements and whatnot. If they just buy this inside their Ameritrade account, there's not it's not something that people aren't already used to dealing with. So it's just simpler, and people don't like change. It's a lot of work to learn how to do something new, and this allows people to get access to Bitcoin Cash in a way that people are already used to and familiar with. So that's worth a lot.
Right. Well, in talking about trying something new, BCH just celebrated its 3-year anniversary split from BTC, Bitcoin Classic. How does that feel, these 3 years? And tell me, are you happy with where the project stands right now after 3 years?
I can hardly believe 3 years of my life went by that quickly. I just feel like I blinked my eyes and it was gone. But if you look at it, Bitcoin Cash has made amazing progress, because when the split happened from the one single version of Bitcoin, the BTC version wound up with all the infrastructure, all the wallets, all the payment processors, and the Bitcoin Cash community kind of had to start from scratch and rebuilding all that infrastructure. But today, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say there are more physical shops around the world accepting Bitcoin Cash than there are any other cryptocurrency in the world, including Bitcoin. So that's a really, really big deal. And as far as online merchants, it's probably about the exact same number between Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash. But the Bitcoin Cash user experience is far, far better. And so once people kind of realize that the Bitcoin Emperor has no close, it has a bad user experience with high fees and unreliable transactions, I think people will wake up and see that for what it is. And if you have something that works as peer-to-peer cash and a store of value and has the exact same limited supply as Bitcoin that arguably only works as a store of value and no longer works as peer-to-peer cash, what do you need the BTC version? The Bitcoin Cash version does it all and does it better and does it for more people around the world. So I'm really, really, really bullish on Bitcoin Cash. In fact, I've been accumulating more the last couple of months here because it just seems like such an amazing bargain because it works so well, has so much infrastructure that's been built out at this point. They just raised, in the last probably about 1 week, they raised around $1 million to fund different infrastructure projects. So the Bitcoin Cash node got 1,000 Bitcoin Cash. Electron Cash raised, I think, 800 Bitcoin Cash. So it's like $300,000, $250,000. And then the guys over at Read.cash also raised a huge amount of money to build a bunch of software infrastructure tools to make it easier for people to build on Bitcoin Cash. And in fact, in Antigua, where I am right now, there's a bunch of guys from Go Crypto running around setting up a bunch of merchants to accept Bitcoin Cash and Ethereum and Bitcoin and other things on their platform here in Antigua. So I think Antigua is about to become a cryptocurrency tourist destination here where the country's not locked down. You can fly in today from Europe or the US. There's no direct flights from Tel Aviv yet, but there's lots of flights from around the world. And then you can spend Bitcoin Cash all over the island here. It's really really amazing how quickly it's taking on, and I think there'll be dozens of places here probably before the end of the week as we're recording this on Tuesday.
Yeah, do you think that the crypto tourists will come and they'll have a star map, and on the star map will be Roger Vere's house, and they'll be taking pictures? Oh, look, there's Roger lives.
I don't know if I want people in front of my house pointing to where I'm at, but there's already a map over at map.bitcoin.com where you can see all these locations around the world that accept Bitcoin Cash already. And it's really an amazing number, and there's more and more growing every week. And if you have a business yourself, you can add your business so simply over there. And if you haven't seen the Bitcoin Cash Register app, you can start accepting Bitcoin Cash at your business in like 30 seconds. It's so easy, and then just add your business to the map. And the worst thing that can happen is you get some new customers that you wouldn't have had otherwise.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's Bitcoin Cash up until now. Tell me a bit about the upcoming BCH November upgrade.
Yeah, so the big thing that's happening in this November is that there will be a slightly different difficulty adjustment algorithm for the miners. So the blocks will be more likely to be consistently at right around 10 minutes per block, whereas over the last couple of years, the block time has been able to vary a bit from a couple of minutes to a half an hour or sometimes even a whole hour. So we'll have much more consistent block times coming up after November, and that's the main thing. The other really fantastic thing, though, Mark Lundenberg, a Bitcoin Cash superstar, the guy that came up with in big part SLP tokens, the guy that came up with Schnorr signatures on Bitcoin Cash, the guy that came up with all sorts of amazing, and he's a former physicist before he got involved in Bitcoin Cash. He just got funded to the tune of he asked for $8,000 a month to work on Bitcoin Cash for the next few months. The community came up with that within 24 hours, and then somebody else doubled it. And so he has the equivalent of $16,000 a month to work on Bitcoin Cash here. And that guy's just a really, really big brained guy, and I'm really excited to see the future things that he builds out on top of Bitcoin Cash. Oh, how could I leave out Cash Shuffle, where you have super strong privacy on top of Bitcoin Cash as well? Cash Fusion is actually the current name. I'm sorry, cashfusion.com or .org. You can check that out. And amazing tool I have running right in the background of my computer while I'm chatting with you right now. It's such a powerful, awesome privacy tool for Bitcoin Cash.
All right, so we're going to touch upon each one of those individually. But first off, you did mention how these guys are raising money to build infrastructure. And that kind of has been a point of contention inside the Bitcoin Cash community. What's going on with the infrastructure funding plan, with the Coinbase rule, or I kind of know your thoughts on it because you did tweet out an article busting the myth that Bitcoin Cash needs a developer fund. In the article, it was highlighted the fact that companies that share knowledge and developer time to collaborate on kind of open source projects and shared infrastructure, what the tech world, the article said, calls altruism with self-interest. They pitched it as the best way to innovation and growth. Do you believe that this is the best way in general for tech to innovate and grow, and especially for Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah, we don't know for sure that it's the best way, but it has, an 11-year track record, right? That's how Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash have always been funded. and have done, arguably pretty darn well with that method. There's other coins already that have an infrastructure funding plan where the Coinbase goes to pay the developers directly. Coins like Dash, coins like Zcash, coins like Zcoin, and I'm sure many others out there. If you're interested in that sort of thing, people should go work on those coins. I don't think that we should alter the original plan that we had for Bitcoin to begin with. It would be a major, major, major change and open all sorts of other potential unintended consequences to take place. So if you're someone who is a fan of the block reward going to fund developers or projects or infrastructure, I invite you to Dash, I invite you to Zcash, I invite you to Zcoin, and I invite you to any other coin out there that already has that built in. But I ask you, don't change that characteristics of Bitcoin Cash, because Bitcoin Cash has had amazing success and gotten to where it is without any of that. So I think it would be a bit reckless and destructive to try and change that now at this point, especially with so much contentiousness within the community in regards to that.
It seems like it's been working so well. We will touch upon a lot of the innovations. You mentioned Cash Fusion, amongst other things. Why is there a push? Why does anyone even want a developer fund if things seem to be developing quite nicely and funds are being raised for the developers who are successful already on the protocol?
Yeah, the only developers that seem to be pushing for the infrastructure funding plan are the developers that haven't gotten any money voluntarily, but maybe that's because the businesses and the community members don't appreciate or don't agree with or don't like or don't value the work that those people have been doing. And so I don't want to get too down into the internal drama, but I can think of some developers I have zero desire to ever give any money to ever, because I don't value the work that they're doing, and I don't value their attitude in public. Where there's other developers like Mark Lundberg, I gave a bunch of money to him. I gave a bunch of money to the Electron Cash flip starter. I gave a bunch of money to almost all the flip starters out there because I do value the work that they're doing. And the Electron Cash guy is like a really, really cool feature. They have these reusable payment codes where you can post an address on your website or your social media or whatever, and people can send you money, but the rest of the world won't be able to see how much money you've received. And that's a big piece of the crypto privacy puzzle that's been missing on Bitcoin Cash, I think, up till now. So I'm really excited to have that ability as well, where people won't know how much money you've received at a particular address.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that ties in with Cash Fusion. Tell me a little bit about Cash Fusion and how it differs from just standard coin mixing.
Yeah, so Cash Fusion is really, really cool, because previously they thought, oh, you have to have everybody have the exact same amount like going out, and then that way you don't know which one of the outputs corresponds with which inputs. But what some clever people, including Mark Lundberg, did was do the math. And if you take a whole bunch of inputs with a whole bunch of different outputs, and then have a whole bunch of different outputs with different values, so different inputs with different sizes in, different outputs with different sizes out, but the numbers, 20 in and 13 out or something like that, and maybe 5 of those going in are mine and 2 coming out are mine, or 3 coming out, or 8 are coming out are mine. The numbers become so big so quickly that there's more potential ways the Bitcoin Cash could have been shuffled up than there are atoms in the entire universe, which basically gives Bitcoin Cash privacy on the same sort of level as a Monero or something like that, where you have no idea what coins coming out correspond with what coins that went in. And so that's a really big deal, and you can run it right now. I'm running it on my computer. Go to cashfusion.com or .org. I should check which one of those it is, but you can download it right there. It's the Electron Cash wallet, and I can't wait to build it directly into the bitcoin.com wallet with our more than 12 million wallets created on that platform. I want to bring peer-to-peer electronic private cash to the world, and we're going to do that with Cash Fusion.
Mm-hmm. And using that, it's essentially, is that something that you could see becoming standard, like you mentioned in bitcoin.com wallet, so becoming standard where we're automatically, if you're holding any BCH, it will automatically go through this Cash Fusion and essentially making it a sort of privacy token?
Yeah, I think that's likely to happen within the bitcoin.com wallet, and the bitcoin.com wallet's the most popular Bitcoin Cash wallet, so that'll kind of make it the default way of happening there. And if that's the case too, it'll be really hard for any regulatory bodies to demonize it, because it's just on for everybody by default with the most, I think we're probably the second most popular mobile wallet in the entire world at this point, behind blockchain.com. And so when I say wallet, I'm counting actual wallets where people have their private keys, not bank wallets where someone else is holding the private keys for them. So I think blockchain's number 1, bitcoin.com is number 2 in terms of mobile wallets in the world. And if it's turned on by default, and I've been gently nudging the blockchain.info guys or blockchain.com guys now to implement the same thing in their wallet as well, because I think that'll be a really useful tool that people will love to have available to them. And it works right now for desktop, and let's get it to mobile as well.
Awesome. Now that's not just the only innovation happening on Bitcoin Cash, but also Bitcoin Cash SLP. You want to tell me a little bit about what that is and what it enables Bitcoin Cash holders to do?
Yeah, so probably the biggest thing to have happened on tokens on top of Bitcoin Cash already is USDT, right? Tether is now on top of Bitcoin Cash as an SLP token. But the really cool part about Bitcoin Cash's scalability is it can handle I'd have to do the exact math, but several times more transactions can be handled on Bitcoin Cash every single day than every single Ethereum transaction, every single Bitcoin transaction by several times. I should have gotten the math ready in advance of this, but it's a lot more there. And the fees will still continue to be a 20th of a penny. Whereas we just saw recently on Ethereum, the 24-hour daily fees were approaching $10 million. People were paying in fees on Ethereum for a single day's worth of transactions, and the average fee was somewhere in the range of $3 or $4 each, and similar numbers per transaction on the Bitcoin network there as well. Bitcoin Cash doesn't have that problem. We have tons of scalability, and the fees will continue to be a 20th of a penny, and the transactions are almost instant. That's a really compelling use case for that. And so one other example that Bitcoin Cash SLP tokens enable. So for example, we talked about Dash earlier that has an infrastructure funding plan. Part of that governance model is by people staking their Dash in what's called a masternode. And you have to lock up 1,000 Dash into a masternode, and then you get paid 7 or 8% interest on your 1,000 Dash. But 1,000 Dash is about $100,000. Most people don't have $100,000 sitting around to stake a masternode and earn 7 or 8% on their Dash with that. But what we can do now is we can have one person or one group with 1,000 Dash make a masternode with 1,000 Dash there, earn the 7 or 8% interest, but then issue 1,000 SLP tokens that represent the Dash that are in the masternode. And then using this really amazing Bitcoin Cash dividend payment tool we have, we can share the masternode earnings with the SLP token holders. But while the people have the SLP tokens, they can then still spend them with payment processors or trade them on exchanges or bounce them around. So it's a way to allow people to still have access to the rewards from a Dash masternode while still basically having access to all the usefulness of their Dash in the form of an SLP token that people can bounce around. And so I think we're going to see all sorts of these staking tokens like the Tezos and then Ethereum, if they go to a staking model as well. All the staking rewards, I think, can be bumped over to Bitcoin Cash tokens that relate to the staked asset on those other chains. So I think we're going to see, kind of clones or mirrors of these other chains on the Bitcoin Cash blockchain as SLP tokens, and then using this dividend payment tool that we have that's live right now today. Anybody can use it. You can make the dividend payments in either Bitcoin Cash or any other SLP token. And so that's available over at tools.bitcoin.com, or there's a graphical user interface that's super easy at mint.bitcoin.com as well. And so I think we're going to see more and more traction on that front. And I'm pretty darn sure we're going to see additional other major stablecoins launching on top of SLP already. Tether set the lead there, but we'll see the other ones following shortly. And special thanks to USD Honest Coin as well, which was like the first stablecoin on SLP. So we're very appreciative to them as well there. So yeah, just so much happening here on top of SLP and Bitcoin Cash and tokens, and it's really exciting to see that.
These sound very similar to a lot of DeFi solutions that are out there, and I want to hear your thoughts on DeFi because it is red hot right now. But would you consider this DeFi on VCH, or do you guys have plans for a DeFi initiative for Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah, there's absolutely all sorts of DeFi stuff happening on top of Bitcoin Cash. The main guys that are working on probably what will be one of the most useful aspects of that are the guys over at General Protocols, and I think it's generalprotocols.com or .org. You'll know when you're on the right page there. And so they're building all that sort of thing. It's also been interesting to note that you have all sorts of Bitcoin BTC wrapped in Ethereum, and people are transferring around more Bitcoin on the Ethereum network than they are on the Lightning network or anywhere else. And there hasn't been so much of that happening with Bitcoin Cash on Ethereum. But the reason for that is that Bitcoin Cash transactions are already super fast and super cheap on the Bitcoin Cash network. Whereas on the Bitcoin network, it's $6 a transaction, and who knows if you're going to get included in the next block or not. So it makes it much more attractive for people to wrap Bitcoin on Ethereum than it is for them to wrap Bitcoin Cash on Ethereum. So if anything, the fact that there's less Bitcoin Cash getting wrapped up on Ethereum and used over there just shows how strong the Bitcoin Cash blockchain is all by itself already without needing, it doesn't need something like that. It already works really well to begin with. Whereas, who would have thought that the layer 2 scaling solution for Bitcoin would wind up being Ethereum? The irony there is pretty palatable.
Right, and especially talking on that difference between Bitcoin Classic and Bitcoin Cash's transaction fees, anyone who's ever looked at your Twitter feed can know this. It's filled with videos of you kind of highlighting that interaction. And also what I found amusing enough was you actually reaching out to BCH haters on Twitter and actually sending them $5 in Bitcoin Cash and saying, hey, try this with Bitcoin Classic. Is this worth your time? There are a lot of haters on crypto Twitter. Is it worth your time to go one by one and try to convert each one?
Yeah, I do think it's definitely worth some time doing that sort of thing, because I've had a number of people say, wow, I didn't know Bitcoin Cash could do that. I thought Bitcoin Cash was a scam. And so like, it's just like every little kid in the world, everyone around them tells them Santa Claus is real and they believe it. And so if on crypto Twitter, everybody around them is telling them, oh, Bcash is a scam, they might believe it. But then if they go and actually have some experience with it, they can realize, oh, this works pretty darn well. This is pretty darn cool. The dividend payment tool is cool. SLP tokens are cool. Bitcoin Cash transactions are fast, cheap, and reliable. So yeah, I had a number of people already that I sent. I was giving out $5 to random people on Twitter that seemed to have been brainwashed in regards to Bitcoin Cash, and several of them really had their eyes opened and they said, wow, I didn't know this. Thank you for sharing this with me. And so yeah, I do think it's a worthwhile endeavor. And I'd actually we used to have a tool on Bitcoin before the fees became too high that would pay anybody to tweet a pro Bitcoin or any Twitter message at all. The fees became too high on Bitcoin to do that anymore, but I'd love to relaunch that again soon on Bitcoin Cash. I think that's a really powerful tool to spread cryptocurrency adoption. At the end of the day, I don't care if it's Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin or Ethereum or Dash or Ripple or take your pick. I just want something that works as peer-to-peer cash for the world. And the reason I'm so passionate about Bitcoin Cash is because it does work and it has the infrastructure and it's ready today for people to start using. Whereas some of these other ones, maybe 18 months later, they'll be ready. And I'm cautiously optimistic for them, but Bitcoin Cash works today.
And that is, undeniably Bitcoin Cash works very well as a peer-to-peer transaction and in cash. But why are you so let's say in love with that use case? I mean, blockchain offers many use cases. Even cryptocurrencies offer many different use cases. Some work better as a store of value. Some work better as a smart contracts to run smart contracts on. What is it about peer-to-peer transactions that you are, so in love with, and why do you find less value in the other use cases in the blockchain sphere?
Yeah, I'm not opposed to the other use cases. I just find the peer-to-peer electronic cash, which was the title of the original white paper, for me, that's what's so exciting. And I think maybe it's because of my e-commerce background. I understood, when I first started my e-commerce, there was no PayPal. People were literally having to mail postal money orders in the mail to pay for my e-commerce orders. And then I remember PayPal and eGold and these different things came along. And then, dealing with credit card fraud from people all over the world. I was selling computer memory. Before cryptocurrencies, computer memory was one of the most targeted items for people to buy with stolen credit cards or hacked credit cards. So every single day we were dealing with people that were trying to cheat me by paying with a stolen credit card for their memory. So I understand just how big of a headache online payments are. And when Bitcoin came along and worked as peer-to-peer electronic cash, not just for one single country, but for the entire world, where you could accept payments from anybody with no risk of chargeback or payment fraud or any of that, like there was zero doubt in my mind that was going to become incredibly popular. And the reason I stopped promoting, the BTC version is because it just plain stopped working for free commerce. It wasn't working for me or my payments in my business anymore, and I needed something that did work. Well, Bitcoin Cash works fantastically well, and it's accepted at more than 100,000 places around the internet, and thousands of places in the physical world as well. It's fantastic. And I think there's just a bunch of people that are hoping to get rich quick by holding Bitcoin and convincing everybody else to hold Bitcoin, even though it doesn't work very well for payments. And they see Bitcoin Cash as a potential way where they're not going to get rich just by holding Bitcoin. And so they hate Bitcoin Cash for that reason. They don't hate it because it actually works as cash, because it does work as cash. And if they would start using it, maybe they'd see that selling some of their BTC for BCH would be a good smart investment in the long term here.
Yeah, well, that answers my next question, which is why is everyone hating on Bitcoin Cash? If it is essentially, just a fork from Bitcoin and steering and aiming as much as possible to the original white paper. But you've already answered that, and I think you do make a good point there that Bitcoin and Bitcoin Classic definitely holds a different purpose, and people are trying to get rich. So you think it's not a lack of education, it's not a lack of knowledge about the technical basis of how Bitcoin Cash works, but rather a different motivation that people are not going and not loving Bitcoin Cash or hating on Bitcoin Cash?
Yeah, I think they already own Bitcoin, just like the US dollar. The US government hates gold and hates every other competing currency because they want the US dollar to be the world's reserve currency that everybody has to use because they already have a bunch of dollars and they can print as many more as they want at any time. It's very similar with the Bitcoin maximalists. They only have BTC and they want that to become the world's reserve currency, and that's why they hate everything else. But if you want something to become the world's reserve currency, it has to work as a currency and has to, provide a good user experience. And BTC no longer does that.
You recently called Bitcoin maximalists the cancel culture of cryptocurrency. I did like that, and I think it's quite amusing to have a cancel culture in the decentralized, censorship free world of blockchain. But switching gears a little bit, you did mention before how Ethereum, how these fees are so high. The network is very, very congested there. I just want to get your thoughts on that. On Ethereum, will they ever be able to figure out the network congestion there?
Yeah, I sure hope that Ethereum will be able to figure out the network congestion, but it's really, really important to point out the differences there. The Ethereum network congestion is because the network actually is congested. The Bitcoin network is congested. The BTC network is congested because the developers artificially handicapped it to not being able to process more transactions because they didn't want it to be able to process more. So it's a very, very different, big difference in philosophy there. Ethereum wants to handle as many transactions as they can. Bitcoin, BTC, Bitcoin Classic, Bitcoin Core, whatever you want to call it, intentionally has limited the amount of transactions that network can handle. So that's a really big difference philosophically. And I think that philosophical difference tends towards Ethereum's favor in the long run. I feel like BTC, and I still own some BTC, but it's like they're shooting themselves in the foot with this. They could have had way more market share around the world, way more adoption. The price probably would have already been over 100,000 US dollars per coin if they just hadn't changed the game plan and made the user experience a bad one and lost. Bitcoin.com no longer promotes BTC. You've really screwed up Bitcoin, and when Bitcoin.com is no longer promoting it. What an absolute disaster. And their whole goal, for those that have been around long enough, they said, we can only do soft forks. We have to have segregated witness as a soft fork so we don't split the chain and we don't split the community. Well, look what happened. It split the Bitcoin chain into thousands of different altcoins there. So it had the exact opposite effect of what they said their intended effect was. And as one of my favorite economists, Milton Friedman, always said, you have to judge a program by its results, not its intentions. And maybe the intentions were good with segregated witness or Bitcoin Core developers, but the outcome and the results have been absolutely atrocious and disastrous for the adoption of Bitcoin around the world.
Well, Milton Friedman didn't live long enough to see it happen, but what would he have thought of DeFi? Because DeFi is really hot right now. It's regulation free. It's open market, baby. What would Milton have said about DeFi as it stands right now and its potential?
Yeah, I think he would love it. I read most of his books when I was a young man. And then Milton Friedman has probably an even more interesting son named David Friedman, who's just an incredibly interesting guy who's still alive. I think he's in his 70s, but actually a big part of why I got so excited about Bitcoin is from a book that was written by Milton Friedman's son, David, called Future Imperfect. And in that book, he describes digital signatures, and I think he called it cyber cash. And he explained how people could use the cyber cash with digital signatures to have a online identity that's separate from the real world identity. And the example he gave was they could practice law without a license and basically be an illegal lawyer practicing law and giving legal advice. And so basically he predicted the same sort of thing as the Silk Road, but with legal advice rather than drugs. But I read this book, I think it came out in like 1995 or 1998, or a long time ago now, and predicted all of this. And then his Milton Friedman's grandson, David's son, Patrick Friedman, is involved in this sort of free cities projects where you get special economic zones from existing governments where cryptocurrency will be allowed to use, and they'll have a lot more economic freedom in those areas. So I think they would love DeFi. People can experiment with what choice of money they have and how to invest the money and what to do with the money and who holds custody of it. This is a fantastic Darwinian evolution of the usefulness of money and the use cases for money as well. So I think they would all love it, and I love it as well.
Are there any particular DeFi projects that are out there right now that you're especially excited about?
I think it's still really early, so it's really risky on that front. So with my own funds, I haven't put really any in, just a tiny bit into some. I've been more interested in doing margin lending for the traders. And so you can earn, high double digit, high teens, 18, 19, 20% interest APR compounded daily on your fiat balance on some of these margin lending platforms. And to me, that seems a little bit safer at the moment. But as this DeFi thing gets more and more popular, maybe some of them will become safer from that perspective. Although holding the underlying asset of ETH recently has just done incredibly well as well. And so that I do hold plenty of ETH, and that's done fantastically well for me as well.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, I'm sure that this was inevitable anyway, that all these, DeFi and crypto as a whole would have skyrocketed regardless. But there's no doubting that COVID-19 and this kind of lockdown of the world economies, which has led to governments printing money just out of thin air, I'm sure has given a big push. How do you view COVID in relation to cryptocurrencies? Has it given it the push it needed now, to skyrocket? Has it for so long, Bitcoin, whether it be Bitcoin Cash or Bitcoin Classic or any type of cryptocurrency, most likely you've been yelling at the top of your lungs for so long now against quantitative easing and governments kind of doing what they want with their currencies. With COVID, has that come true clearly for even non-crypto lovers?
Yeah, I think there's been two pushes on that front. So during this lockdown here, governments have been printing money like crazy, and go and study economics. Printing money causes inflation in the long run. And so, but the other side of this is that now everybody's locked at home under lockdowns. They have time to spend on their computer. They can now research cryptocurrencies. We've seen the amount of web traffic on all these cryptocurrency websites. When the lockdown started around the world, the amount of web traffic really increased. So now people that previously didn't have time to read about cryptocurrencies or read about quantitative easing or how all this stuff works or read about the benefits of hard money, now suddenly they have time and they're able to be exposed to all of this. So we've seen the amount of web traffic on bitcoin.com increase sharply when these worldwide lockdowns happen around the world. Or blockchain.poker is another example. It's a cryptocurrency poker website, but the amount of traffic over there went through the roof when all these lockdowns started. So I think there's a dual-edged push. Yeah, governments are printing a whole bunch of money, but two, people are locked at home, so now they have time to go on the internet and read about all these things and educate themselves and set up wallets and start using it. So I think from both sides, it's been a big boon for cryptocurrency in general.
And the crypto markets right now seem to be in a nice bull run. Have they reacted how you would have thought they reacted? And what's your general sentiment on the crypto market right now?
And so much of it is still just pure speculation rather than actual use in commerce. I think actual usefulness in commerce is what will sustain the long-term price. And so I've been through lots of booms and busts in the crypto world. I feel like the price has gone up sharply recently. I think at some point there's likely to be a pullback at some point. But the more useful you can make these cryptocurrencies for real people in their real lives and real commerce, the more bullish I'll be on the price in the long term. So, I went to DevCon at the end of last year. Like the Ethereum ecosystem is just amazing. How many developers are building how many interesting things over there. Really, really amazing to see that. And the Bitcoin Cash community, though, too, is absolutely one of the most passionate in all of crypto. There's a real big passionate community of really smart and motivated people over there as well. So those are probably the two coins that I'd be the most bullish on at this point, because there's just so much brain power and so much dedication and excitement and cool people building cool things on those chains.
Yeah, well, you seem to be someone who values the actual usefulness of the coin and the actual projects and infrastructure themselves than the current price. Chainlink has overtaken Bitcoin Cash for price. But I would love to hear your thoughts, less on price, but more on actual usefulness of the Chainlink and the oracles. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, so I know almost nothing about Chainlink. The only reason I know anything is because the price came out of nowhere and it became a top 10 coin basically overnight. And all I know is it has something to do with oracles, and maybe I'll spend some time reading about it. But there's just so much stuff to read about every day. So that, to be honest, I can't speak knowledgeably about Chainlink, other than oracles in general are going to be fantastically useful for all these smart contracts executing automatically on chain. So there's definitely a need for oracles, but I don't know about Chainlink's Oracle token and why that would have a $6 billion market cap at this point. My suspicion is that it can go down just as fast as it went up. But do I wish I bought some a couple of weeks ago? Sure, but live and learn. And do I think Where is it going to go in the future? No idea. But if there's not an underlying usefulness for the token, I wouldn't be bullish on the future usefulness or future price of the token if there's not a real compelling use case for the token itself. Pet rocks, had their day. I'm not saying Chainlink is a pet rock, but if there's no actual usefulness in real commerce, I'm not bullish on the long-term price of these things.
If the goal is long-term usefulness of a project and the usability and spendability, Bitcoin Cash right now it's available. If you mentioned hundreds of thousands of merchants around the world, it's quick, it's easy, it's reliable, it's cheap. Where's the mass adoption? And this isn't only a problem for Bitcoin Cash. This is a problem for almost every single cryptocurrency or all of blockchain even itself. But when is it going to be that not just the early adopter, but when we're going to reach that mass adoption where that is the standard? I go to my store and I spend, whether it be Bitcoin Cash or any cryptocurrency, that, like you mentioned, you don't care which one it is. You want them to choose the quickest, easiest, fastest, cheapest. When will be the first cryptocurrency to overtake regular, normal fiat money when people come to take out their wallet?
Yeah, so 10 years ago, it was a much easier proposition for Bitcoin because the banks and PayPal, they didn't have such fast, easy, cheap, reliable payments. But the traditional payments industry has made big progress in the last decade as well. But one of the other, I think, final missing pieces that we kind of need to help solve is the stability. Like lots of merchants don't want to deal with exchange rate risk. And so DeFi is helping address all of that. And then stablecoins are helping address all of that as well. I guess it would be a step forward for the world if the world starts using stablecoins on blockchains. Like that's better than what we have now, but not nearly as good or fulfilling as if the entire world were to start using actual hard money on a blockchain, something like a Bitcoin Cash or some other hard money asset out there. So, but yeah, let's overcome the stability issue, and DeFi and stablecoins are both helping address that.
So you consider Bitcoin Cash a hard money?
Clearly, there's a 21 million limit on there, so it's absolutely hard money. And a lot of people are a lot more hard-nosed about that sort of thing. So like, I think coins with a tail emission, like a Monero, where you know exactly what the emission is going to be, like I think that's hard enough money as well there. I don't have any problem with coins with tail emissions there to keep the mining going for forever. But even Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash there, the mining reward doesn't run out for another, like 120 years. That's tons of time. Like problems for 120 years from now aren't problems for us to need to worry about today. We can let people smarter than us with better tools than us solve those in the future. So,
for sure. Now, what do you see as that major, barrier of entry for people to start using cryptocurrencies? Even just as a peer-to-peer cash or even just as a store of value or any use that they want to use it for? Where is that barrier of entry? Because, right now, if I go to my parents and I say, listen, mom, dad, there's this amazing new cryptocurrency. You can spend it at hundreds of thousands of merchants and it's quick, it's easy, it's reliable. They're going to look at me like I'm crazy. So, what do you think is that barrier of entry? What do you think is we could move away that stumbling block? What is that stumbling block that's going to allow people to be ready to hop on board this runaway train that we know about, but they don't believe?
Yeah, I think it needs to be that pitch that you just gave to your mom and dad. Hey, there's this amazing new money. It's fast, it's cheap, it's reliable, and you can save 20% on Amazon with it. When you add that, you can save 20% on something. That's a big motivating factor. And so websites like purse.io are a fantastic example of that. So for people that are in the US or North America or even in mainland Europe, the UK and whatnot, you can receive big giant discounts by spending your Bitcoin Cash on purse.io, where the goods shipped to you directly from Amazon. That's a really, really big deal. And I think that's a fantastic motivator for people. We're actually looking forward to arbitraging that same system to be able to sell people discounted gift cards right from within the Bitcoin.com wallet, where you'll be able to buy an Uber gift card at maybe 10 or 20% off right there from your Bitcoin.com wallet. Then you'll be able to save 10 or 20% off Uber Eats or your next Uber ride, or Papa John's Pizza or Domino's Pizza, or Walmart, or all these different things out there. And so we're looking forward to getting that rolled out there as well, so we can tell people, yeah, there's this new money, it's fast, it's cheap, it's reliable. The payment fluctuates a little bit, but you can save 10 or 20% on your next purchase from whatever your favorite merchant is, and arbitraging those payment inefficiencies out there in the world, and using Bitcoin Cash to bridge the gap there. I think that's a really powerful, compelling use case that'll help drive mass adoption, because You can then market to every single Domino's Pizza customer in the world, hey, do you want to save 10% on your next Domino's Pizza? Use Bitcoin Cash. And if they're ordering Domino's Pizza every week anyhow, and now they can save 10%, and it's just a tiny bit of extra work for them to do it, they'll be motivated to do that. So I'm looking forward to driving more cryptocurrency usage around the world by actual use cases where people can save money by doing so. Because we have all the philosophically motivated people on board already.
Yeah, for sure. Now, and you do highlight a good point. It is very hard sell for someone, currently, if you're not going to tell them it's better, cheaper, faster, right now they know the dollar bill. And we say, hey, listen, the government's printing money, inflation will happen, but inflation hasn't happened yet. And historically, where the crypto community has seen this adoption for actual spending cryptocurrencies has been in places where inflation has already hit, Argentina, Venezuela, these places around the world with currency instability. Has Bitcoin Cash, have you seen strongholds in these areas where local currency inflation has skyrocketed? People are turning to something obviously as a store of value, but have you seen also that actual peer-to-peer, that spending of money in these politically unstable locations?
Yeah, we're seeing it some in a real interesting example of that. And for whatever reason, Max Kaiser turned into a bit of a Bitcoin maximalist. And it was really interesting. I saw just yesterday, he quoted the tweet from a guy that he had invested in, maybe 6 years ago. And Max Kaiser, said, I'm proud to have invested in this company, to, the first outside investment in a Bitcoin company in India. And the guy whose tweet he was quoting and the guy that Max had invested in then replied to Max on Twitter and he said, that's why we're supporting Bitcoin Cash today, because it works for the people of India, because it's fast, cheap, and reliable, or something to that effect. And so right there, direct to Max, the guy that Max had invested in is saying, hey, we now support Bitcoin Cash today, not BTC, because of the fees, plain and simple. And then Max replied with using a 4-letter word at him, and it just seems so strange. And I think maybe that's another example of somebody that owns a bunch of BTC and they see Bitcoin Cash as maybe something that will compete with BTC, and they won't earn as much money from the price of BTC going up in the future if Bitcoin Cash becomes money for the world. And there's no doubt about it. It's not even arguable at this point. Bitcoin Cash provides a better user experience for payments than BTC does. That part's not arguable. And I think it just takes time for people to actually realize that, because if you haven't investigated it, you won't know that Bitcoin Cash payments are just plain provide a better user experience. But I have a video coming out on that very shortly that will demonstrate it very, very clearly for the world.
Well, I can't wait to see that. And it seems that you're not the only one who's realized that the power of the US dollar has been on the decline for a long time. From when it got delinked from the gold standard to the government continually to print money. It's not only you, but if you look at on an international level, on a global level, governments used to do all their transactions in US dollars, and a lot of governments are switching away from that. If you look at Russia and China, I believe that right now, for the first time, in history that since been recorded, the majority of their transactions are not done in US dollar, but rather in euro and other funds. Do you see, or how would you feel if the world looks at the US government and says, hey, we had enough of them manipulating the money that we've all been using. Let's band together. Let's make a centralized digital coin powered by the blockchain, and we'll all agree that there's a set supply limit, so that it's inflation resistant. Would you be against it merely because there are governments involved? Or would you look at it and say, hey, you know what, they came together, all these governments, they made a good solution. I'll try it out. I'll go for it if it's cheaper, faster, and more reliable than Bitcoin Cash.
Yeah, I think the beautiful part about the invention of blockchains is now you don't need governments to do it. The market gets to compete, because now we can have these monetary systems that can't be shut down and can't be turned off. And so at the end of the day, the world is going to come together voluntarily and say, hey, this blockchain with this token functions the best for my monetary needs, so I'm going to use that one. And so if governments come together and come up with the best one, okay, that's fine. That seems really unlikely, because just about any time government does anything, it's slow, expensive, and unreliable. And just look at the post office or the DMV or any of this other stuff that government does. So I think the free market is much more likely to come out with a fast, cheap, effective, reliable solution for the entire world to use. And we've already seen that in the fact that there's several thousand different cryptocurrencies that have been produced by the free market, and more people are using any of those than any government issued blockchain currency that I'm aware of at this point, and I think that'll continue to be the case because governments can't shut these blockchains down. That's the key thing. Whereas previously, things like e-gold or even things like PayPal today, if governments want to, they can shut them down in a heartbeat. Whereas these blockchains can't be shut down.
Mm-hmm. And if you look at it, I think you make a great point there. But if governments are not involved, and we're looking at DeFi. DeFi is a great example of that. Let's take the power out of the traditional centralized hands. Let's put it to the people. There is obviously the beginning, they're going to work out the kinks, but isn't there always a danger? And I'm pretty sure I know your stance on this, but isn't there always a danger that that either one, uneducated people, these are very complex systems. Uneducated people will mess up, lose their money. I mean, look at yams. I mean, I don't know if you've been following these stuff, but with DeFi, isn't there a danger of kind of a manipulation of the system without any let's say security guard? I don't want to say security guard. That's a little tough, but any counselor monitoring the kids running around.
Yeah, there's absolutely that risk, but that's why it needs to be, buyer beware or investor beware. And that exact same risks, those exact same set of risks exist with traditional finance. And Bernie Madoff is the perfect example of that. He was supposed to be the regulator, keeping an eye on everything to make sure that this sort of horrible stuff doesn't happen. And yet it happened right there as well. So don't think that the government is able to stop bad people from doing bad things. They never have been able to, and I doubt they ever will be able to. So you need to be responsible with your own money. Or decide carefully who to trust to be responsible with your own money. So Coinbase is a good example of that. So far, they've been responsible with people's money and they haven't lost it. And if you lose your password, Coinbase is able to reset your password for you. Whereas other wallets like the Bitcoin.com wallet or the blockchain.info wallet, if you lose your password, there's nobody in the world that can help you reset it. So people can decide which one of those two ones they want to use. Whereas with Coinbase, the government could seize each individual user's funds if they wanted to. Whereas with blockchain or Bitcoin.com, it wouldn't be possible for a government to seize the funds. So you have to decide which one of those risks you want to take: the risk of losing your password or the risk of having your funds seized by a government. And don't think that the government's only seized criminal funds. We can look at what happened in Cyprus a few years back. The government ran out of money, so they seized a portion of everybody's funds and everybody's bank account. And you didn't have to be any sort of criminal whatsoever to have lost a large percent of the money that you had in the bank. So just because you're not a criminal, don't think that means that your money is safe in a cryptocurrency bank. It's not. Governments always go and look for where the money is, and they try and figure out a way to take it.
Well, clearly you're not a fan of centralized power and centralized governance. I think we've gotten that so far. What are your thoughts on DAOs, both as a tool for managing these protocols and also potentially as a governance tool for life?
Yeah, I think it's the jury's still out on that one. It's kind of too early to tell, but I'm glad that all these experiments are taking place and people can try and figure out how to make a DAO that actually works and works well. And if people try enough things, hopefully at least one or maybe many of them will work well. But it still seems awfully early, and I've seen lots of politicking around DAOs with people still trying to influence the way those things work. So, but the more experiments people try in the world, the better, and hopefully we can find more new and useful tools for the world to deal with governance issues.
Mm-hmm. I mean, part of those experiments is now proof of stake, and we've spoken about Ethereum and their congestion issues and them trying to move over to proof of stake. What are your thoughts on proof of stake as a consensus model, and if it actually does prove to be superior, or if we wait and see and it works out, would you consider trying to push Bitcoin Cash over to proof of stake?
So I just plain don't know at this point, and I haven't delved really deeply into the computer science in regards to distributed proof of stake systems versus proof of work systems. So I don't have a strong opinion there. So for myself personally, I'm just going to wait on the sidelines and look for the empirical evidence of which ones work and work well, and the empirical evidence will be good enough for me. But I think we're still too early to have that empirical evidence at this point.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like it. You don't like to speculate. You like to see what works, and you flow. True free market man. So then I'll leave it at this. What is next for Bitcoin Cash? We've already spoken about many of the amazing features it has so far, but what is next for Bitcoin Cash?
I think more and more non-custodial financial systems are going to be a really big deal. So there's an interesting website out there, justfans.com or something like that, where people can post their photos and then charge their fans for their photos. But the payments are hard for that for worldwide. So imagine if someone were to build a similar platform on Bitcoin Cash, whereas when the person is sending their Bitcoin Cash on chain, like the payment address has two addresses. One is for the website that's hosting the platform, and the other is for whoever produced the image or the content. And so part of the money goes directly to the content producer, part of the money goes directly to the platform. The platform never even touches the money that goes to the content producer. And so I think that would be a really, really powerful tool where we'll see more and more non-custodial financial systems. Or imagine kind of a restaurant where they're selling food, but whenever the customer is paying for the food, 80% of the money that's paid from the customer on chain goes directly to the restaurant, and 20% goes directly to the server, to where the restaurant never even paid the server any money whatsoever. Only the customer paid the server money. So then the question is, the server even an employee of the restaurant, or is the server just like totally on their own? Right now we're seeing a giant problem with Uber in California, where Uber's saying we're going to shut down in California if the California state government forces us to claim that all the Uber drivers are employees of Uber. Well, imagine if you made the Uber app, where the Uber app pays with cryptocurrency directly on chain, where part of the money goes directly to the Uber corporation, and then the other part of the money goes directly to the driver of the car, and Uber never even had custody for half a second of the driver's money whatsoever. It seems like the argument that the driver is an employee of Uber would be much, much weaker, and then the Uber corporation could tell the state of California, go to hell, leave us alone, we're not paying anybody anything. The people riding in the cars are paying the drivers directly. We never even have custody of the driver's money ever in any way whatsoever. And so I think that there's going to be a real big adoption of these so-called non-custodial financial services, where people are paying directly, and whole big organizations like an Uber can exist, but where Uber never even touches the driver's money ever. And it's just the passengers of the cars pay the Uber driver directly and pay the Uber app company directly. I think that's a really big deal, and I'm excited to see more and more things get built out like that.
Well, you just fixed Uber's biggest problem right there. Have you called and reached out to them and pitched Bitcoin Cash as a solution?
I'm going to call Travis later this afternoon and let him know what I think here. So
it's incredible. You just fixed their entire problem right there. And I think that's interesting because building upon what we've all said, we're so early in the game in this brand new technology that we're still seeing such interesting uses of even basic use cases like peer-to-peer cash, where, like you just mentioned, is potentially help reshift the way massive corporations work. What's the most interesting use case, even within peer-to-peer transactions? What's the most interesting use case you've seen so far that you never even kind of imagined when you first discovered the technology?
I think the Silk Road was a pretty darn good example of that. I love it anytime I see people use cryptocurrencies or technology in general to get around stupid regulations. Like, there's so many stupid regulations around the world that are literally retarding the entire world's rate of economic growth and retarding all of humankind's progress into the future. And so if we can build tools that allow people to ignore stupid laws and stupid regulations, that's a good thing for all of humankind. And I'm really excited about those applications. And so maybe that Uber example is one more example, because Uber is wonderfully convenient. People love to use Uber as customers, and people love to drive for Uber as well. And the ones that don't love driving for Uber, there's plenty of other jobs out there they can look at, and they wouldn't be driving for Uber if it wasn't the best option that they have available to them at the moment. So, I think it would be a real travesty for people in California or anywhere to not have access to something like Uber. So, yeah, let's use technology to bypass, stupid laws, and allow technology to enable people to do absolutely anything that's peaceful. So long as it's peaceful, you shouldn't need permission to do it.
Mm-hmm. Now, the one thing we haven't touched upon, which once again, I have a pretty strong feeling of where you stand on this, but the potential for blockchain to actually give people their private data, enable them to actually be custodians of their private data, because right now, big corporations essentially hold and sell people's private data. What are your thoughts on blockchain potentially being the solution to actually empower people to hold their data and enable them to monetize their own private data?
Yeah, so I think zero knowledge proofs can play a really big role in here. So like lots of times, and a lot of times I think they're dumb regulations, but companies are required to have, customer data as to who they're dealing with. But they don't, like, let's say, you have to be 18 years old to do something, but that just to prove that I'm over 18, I don't need to tell them my address. I don't need to tell them my social security number. I don't need to tell them anything other than that I'm and they don't even need to know, I'm 41 today. They don't need to know if I'm 19 or 29 or 41. Like, it's none of their business as long as I prove that I'm over 18. You can do that with a zero knowledge proof. And so the way a lot of people, they hear this term zero knowledge proof, they don't understand what the heck is a zero knowledge proof. So like the easiest way to understand what a zero knowledge proof is everybody's seen the Where's Waldo books, right? Let's say I want to prove to you that I know where Waldo is, but I don't want you to know where he is. So I would cut a hole in a little tiny or a big piece of paper, and I would move the hole so it's covering the paper's covering the entire book, and just the hole is on Waldo. And I'll say, see through the hole, there's Waldo, but you're not able to see where he is in relation to the rest of the picture. Now I've proved to you that I know where Waldo is, but you don't know where Waldo is because I just proved to you that only I know. You can do the same thing with identities. So maybe you'd have like, Equifax or some centralized institution. You give them a copy of your ID and proof and whatnot, and then they would issue you a token. And like one token proves that you're over 18, another token proves that you're a resident of a particular country, another token proves whatever. And then once the token is sitting at whatever address, you could just sign with a token that says that you're over 18 for whatever website that requires that its customers are over 18. You sign with the token. They don't know who you are. They don't know, what actual age you are, but you've proved to them that you're over 18, but they don't need to know anything. They don't know if you're a man or woman. They don't know anything else. And so you can prove things in a zero knowledge proof sort of way using these. And I think that that's better than when everybody turns over all their information to, what was the latest one? There was it's every week there's a new story about a company that got hacked for tens of millions of customer data, and IDs get leaked out on the dark net and for sale. It happens all the time. So this is a way to really help limit that sort of thing from taking place. And I think there's big business there as well. But I'm the most excited about the peer-to-peer electronic cash use case. For me, that's even more exciting and interesting. Permissionless cash, then this other stuff kind of becomes less relevant as well. So let's get peer-to-peer permissionless cash for the world.
It's funny you gave that Waldo example. I was speaking to Alex Kahana, Chief Medical Officer for Consensus Health yesterday, and he actually explained zero knowledge proofs the same way. And I do think it's an apropos analogy for it. And a lot of that conversation with him also centered on COVID-19. And you've said that the world is suffering from the media and the government's fear mongering, not from COVID-19. You want to expand upon that a little bit?
Yeah, and to clarify, like COVID-19 is a real disease, and some people do die from it, and some people do get sick from it. But the government reaction has caused way more deaths and way more destruction and way more problems for the world than the actual virus has itself. And but it's you have to look at both what's seen and what's not seen. And so what you can see is, okay, some people have COVID and they're in a hospital and some of them die. That's very clear to see. But what about the people that were locked in their house for weeks on end, all alone, weren't able to see their family or their friends or their husband or their wife or their children, and got depressed and then didn't eat right or didn't exercise, then had a heart attack or had a stroke or committed suicide or did who knows what? Those people aren't seen as being out there and died because of the coronavirus government reaction. And there's probably a whole lot more of those people. Well, people that lost their jobs, couldn't pay their mortgage, couldn't pay for this bill, couldn't pay for their doctor checkup, and then didn't detect the cancer as early as they would have, or they didn't pay for their gym membership because they couldn't go to the gym, didn't get exercise, and then got cancer because of that. Like, there's just so much destruction happening all over the world because of these things that people don't necessarily realize. And so I think the government clamped down on the economy and people's freedom of movement and all this sort of thing has been far, far, far more destructive than the actual virus itself. And people have viruses, and that's the human condition, right? Like, these have lasted for forever. And the narrative has just shifted so strongly. Like, initially was flatten the curve. Everybody's going to get the coronavirus, but we don't want them to get it all at once. We want them to get it over the course of a month or three, so that the hospitals don't get overwhelmed. Well, here we are, months and months later. The hospitals never got overwhelmed, and they're still trying to lock people down and force people to not be able to go out at night and have to wear masks and this and that and can't travel to this country or that country. It's just it's literally retarding the entire world's rate of progress and holding back all of humankind from advancing the human condition and raising up everybody to a higher standard of living. And so it's really really sad to see that going on for the whole world. And I think there's a lot of monkey see, monkey do stuff here. You see the big countries like the U.S. doing all these things, and all the smaller countries think, oh, the big boys are doing it, we better do it too, because we're scared to do our own thing. And I wish more people would try doing their own thing in life and in the world, because that's how progress is made, right? What if Rosa Parks had just looked around and saw, well, all the other colored people are sitting at the back of the bus, so I better sit at the back of the bus too? No. People need to be willing to break out and say, no, I'm not just going to follow the crowd. I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to sit at the front of the bus. I'm going to go outdoors. I'm going to see my friends. I'm not going to wear a mask on Zoom video calls. Like, that's the latest thing. They're telling people they're supposed to wear masks on Zoom video calls in the US for certain government employees. It's just crazy. And so I'd like to see, society, it's not that all lawbreakers are good people, but society is moved forward by people that are willing to break the law. And so, Rosa Parks is one example of that, and there's plenty more all throughout history. Society has moved forward by the lawbreakers. Good people disobey bad laws, and I think we need to see more of that in the world.
Well, do you believe that something or should be done? For instance, you live on an island. If you knew that the stats showed there are no cases on the island, would you be pro saying, hey, we're not going to let people into the island unless we have a good and quick enough system that we can test them to make sure they're not bringing the virus on?
I think I already support everybody's right to do that with the property that they own. So if your house is COVID-free, you have the right to choose who you allow in or out of your house. But I don't think you own some big giant piece of land with millions of people living in it. And I don't think you have the right to tell people where they can or can't go when other people are inviting them to their own property. So, and I was just recently in an island that was exactly like that. In St. Kitts, there were 0 cases of coronavirus, and the country was still completely locked down, where people weren't allowed in. And it was really difficult to get out. So,
right. And you did mention that people weren't able to get out, weren't able to work out, weren't able to go to the gym. Something that I've been seeing some interviews, and I've always wanted to know. You practice Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I do as well, and I want to, now that we're towards the end of the interview, ask you some questions on that. First up, more general, what lessons have you learned from BJJ that you think you can apply to cryptocurrencies?
Yeah, I think, or just in life, is that there's more than one way to do something. And so I think I probably learned that from both Jiu-Jitsu and Magic the Gathering, is there's so many different ways to accomplish the same goal. So you need to look at what your goal is and then figure out a way to get to that goal. And so Jiu-Jitsu definitely helps with that, because there's a million different ways to submit somebody, and you just need to find any one of those will be good enough. So.
And there's a million different ways to do it, but what is your favorite position, favorite choke, and favorite submission?
Yeah, I'm getting older now, and so I don't have as good of stamina or this and that. And actually, I've been really, really enjoying wrist locks lately. I can just find them absolutely everywhere, and it makes it so my opponents, they're scared to even grab a hold of me, because I'm just going to wrist lock them right away. So I love that, and I can't wait to start training again. Actually, it's been a couple of months since I've been able to train because of the coronavirus issues. But I'm thinking by the end of this month I'll go somewhere where I'll be able to train again. So, and I hope you're being able to train in Tel Aviv there, because it's addicting. Life is not the same without the jiu-jitsu in it.
I 100% agree, and I'm letting you know right now, there is training right after this call is over. I'm going straight to roll for jiu-jitsu. So if you get the chance, fly out to Tel Aviv. I'd love to roll with you. Roger, thanks so much for taking the time. And for all of you watching at home for Reimagine 2020, I'm Yonah Hochhauser. Thanks for watching.